I'm Major Pritchard, and thank you for watching today's Corn Belt Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, as we talk about the three headlines here in the Corn Belt over the next week or so, first we'll be talking about the remnants of berry making its way through the eastern Corn Belt with thunderstorm clusters elsewhere across parts of the northern Corn Belt into the upper Midwest over the next couple of days. As we get into the late part of the week, into the weekend, we'll be talking about some excessive heat across the big chunk of the Corn Belt here, very hot and humid, before we talk about a pattern change coming in early next week in the form of some cooler and less humid weather across a big chunk of the Corn Belt. Snapshot look at the forecast here, precipitation anomalies for week 1 and week 2. Week 1 on the left, keeping the higher precipitation off to the north with this ridge intact. But as we head into the period from the 23rd through the 29th, getting into the last part of July, a little bit more closer to average, if not a little bit above average across a bigger chunk of the Corn Belt here. And that's because we're going to take this ridge and shove it off to the left, or to the west, I should say, just a little bit. And that does bring in some of that upper level jet stream support to kind of bring thunderstorm chances back into a bigger chunk of the Corn Belt. We see a similar reflection here with the temperature forecast, the 16th through the 21st. Going to be talking about some big time heat across the central part of the country before, again, we shove that ridge off to the west just a little bit, and that does bring a cooler air mass into the Corn Belt here July 22nd through the 26th. The hazards map from the National Weather Service, a big area already highlighted with excessive heat watches across the Midwest, and then of course dealing with flood advisories in the lower Mississippi Valley as we've watched berry make its way north. The last 48 hours of precipitation here again, this would be berry making its journey northward, and then of course ridge riding thunderstorms off to the north across the northern plains into the upper Midwest. This would be our favorite area for thunderstorms otherwise. This, of course, is the wild card in the form of berry making its way northward and what otherwise would be a much drier pattern across a big chunk of the central and the eastern Corn Belt. But all that said, berry does exist, and we need to talk about what's going to be happening here over the next 24 to 48 hours. Of course, here is the circulation from berry right now making its way into the Ohio River Valley. There's a front kind of draped across the region here, and that's helping to curve berry off to the east. And that, again, is going to bring some scattered showers and storms to parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, parts of Kentucky, and Tennessee. Watching a cluster of thunderstorms right now decaying across parts of Nebraska. Of course, this is part of our overall pattern with the jet stream doing something kind of like this, with those ridge riding thunderstorms across the northern Corn Belt into the upper Midwest. A look at the radar right now, what's going on underneath those clouds. Of course, here is the remnants of berry making their way north and then eventually off to the northeast. We'll play this once more and then watching these clusters of thunderstorms across the upper Midwest into the Dakotas. Now, where are we going over the next 2.5 days or so? We'll look at the high-resolution NAM model, and we will just go ahead and we'll click through time with this one. Getting into the middle part of the day on Tuesday into Tuesday afternoon, this is where the core of the remnants of berry will be here on Tuesday afternoon, seeing scattered thunderstorms develop across the region. No major severe weather threat expected with this, but certainly some downpours expected, maybe some gusty winds with some of the stronger storms. But berry and its remnants really going to be impacting the eastern Corn Belt here over the next day and a half, talking about Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, parts of Kentucky, and Tennessee as it makes its way off to the east. Now, we'll also be dealing with these ridge riding thunderstorm clusters across the Dakotas into parts of the upper Midwest here as we go through the next 2.5 days, here Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon. So be watching for that. Again, heavy downpours, maybe some slightly higher risks for severe weather in parts of the Dakotas into the upper Midwest. That would be, of course, in the form of damaging wind gusts with these thunderstorms clusters developing across the region. So we'll head into Wednesday morning now, continuing to head off into the middle part of the week. Berry keeps making its way off to the east, now moving into parts of the northeast region, but certainly still seeing some isolated shower and thunderstorm activity across parts of the far eastern Corn Belt here on Wednesday. And again, ridge riding thunderstorm clusters expected off to the north. If we take a look at the total precipitation forecast here over the next 2.5 days, we'll just kind of loop this out. Here come the remnants of berry making their way across the eastern Corn Belt, and then talking about thunderstorm clusters across the Dakotas into parts of the upper mid-Mississippi Valley. This takes us through Thursday afternoon. Beyond that, well, let's check in with the jet stream forecast here as we head through the later part of the week and then into early next week. We'll go ahead and we'll pause this. We'll step through time just so I can kind of time out the shift in the jet stream here. So we look at the next couple of days now, getting into late week now. We'll go ahead and we'll stop on Friday. The jet stream well off to the north, this ridge across the central United States, keeping things hot as we talk about Thursday, Friday, and Saturday across a huge chunk of the Corn Belt. Honestly, a lot of us are going to be feeling that heat and humidity as we head into the late part of the week. And I'll take the drawings off and then show you where we're headed as we talk about late next week, or not late next week, the late part of the weekend and then to early next week. We'll go ahead and we'll keep going Sunday now into Monday. You're seeing that shift. Now we're taking the ridge and we're kicking it off to the west, kind of putting the axis over the Rocky Mountains. When we do something like that, we'll go ahead and we'll let this get into the middle part of next week. It's about, I don't want to go too far out and we lose a little bit of reliability. But we just kind of focus on Wednesday, just for example. We take the jet stream, we've got the overall flow doing something like this. So here is our ridge axis. This would be where the core of that heat would be then, shifting that off to the west. And then when we talk about parts of the Corn Belt now seeing northwest flow, and that is a cooler, it's a less humid pattern, and it's one where we've got the jet stream support back in the region for more favorable conditions for rain and thunderstorm development. So we'll leave the specifics for some of our later forecasts. Certainly, Eric will be touching that in his Wednesday and Thursday videos, and then I'll have an update for this potential pattern shift here Friday before we get into that. So just kind of teasing that now. Certainly, the bigger concern, the more immediate concern, is going to be dealing with Barry's remnants and thunderstorm clusters over the next couple of days, and then the heat here later in the week. But it does appear we're getting some growing consistency here in the shift to a cooler and potentially wetter pattern across the Corn Belt early next week. Temperature anomalies, of course, you can see the core of the heat right there building in over the weekend, and then that shift to a cooler pattern towards the end of the loop. We'll go ahead and we'll step through time with this one as well, just to kind of show you when the core of the heat ends up over the Corn Belt. And I would peg that here Thursday, getting into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. By the time we get to Monday, starting to see that change now across a big chunk of the Corn Belt, seeing those reds be erased and replaced by the green and the blue colors, and that is a much cooler and a much drier air mass. We could take a look at the core here though. Thursday going from left to right, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Looking at this is looking at the temperature here on the surface of your skin, so looking at the heat index, looking at heat index values here, combining the temperature and the humidity, getting readings here close to 100 across a big chunk, if not above 100 here, of the Corn Belt here. This would be, again, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when we'll be looking at the core of the heat across the Corn Belt, with again, heat index temperatures around 100 degrees, if not slightly above that. Another way of looking at the pattern change here, we'll look at the precipitable water here. So looking at the amount of moisture within the air mass, obviously a very saturated air mass here with Barry making its way northward. You'll watch Barry hook off to the east, and you'll see the Gulf of Mexico continues to be open here for the next several days. It seems like the Gulf of Mexico has been open for business going all the way back to last fall. But as we play this loop, we'll go ahead and get into next week. You start to see this area of low pressure off to the north up here start to take over dominance across the Corn Belt, kicking a drier air mass southward into a big chunk of the Corn Belt, and again getting northerly flow across the region. And this is just not something we've had in any kind of sustained manner for quite some time. We'll look at the precipitation forecast then from the European model, and we'll just take this out, stepping through time again, watching Barry make its way eastward, watching thunderstorm clusters across the Dakotas into the upper Midwest, shutting things down for the most part across the Central Plains into the eastern Corn Belt then as we build the core of the ridge in here Thursday through Sunday. So again, very hot afternoons, maybe pop-up thunderstorms, but overall, more organized thunderstorms going to be taking a break here after we get past Wednesday as we talk about areas south of the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. North of this line staying active here as we get into the later part of the week. Now, as we get into Sunday and then eventually Monday, we're seeing this pattern kind of shift. We're seeing jet stream support come back into the region, and that does bring a chance for, or the resumption of showers and thunderstorms across the region. I kind of lost where I was at here. Let me go ahead and just jump back in. There we go. And now let's go ahead and we'll take a look at, let's jump ahead once, the overall flow of the jet stream from the GFS, because we see a similar picture here. We'll just go ahead and we'll play this out, watching this kind of go through, and then we see the ridge shift off to the east as we get into the later part of the loop, building in this northwest flow in a much cooler pattern. So it's not just the European model that's teasing this out. The GFS does agree that we shift to a cooler, drier air mass, but with a chance for more frequent showers and storms across the region as we get into next week. You can see the same thing here looking at the precipitation forecast from the European model, the total accumulated forecast as we go through the next couple of days. And then I think I've got, nope, I thought I had one more map in there, but I don't. Let's go ahead and I want to just show you here, let me take this out halfway and then kind of freeze it, because as we get into the weekend, this is about what I've got the strongest strongest confidence is taking us through the end of the weekend here. Again, dealing with Barry's remnants for the eastern Corn Belt, and then these thunderstorm clusters off to the north. Once we shift this pattern and we start adding in some precipitation here, again taking the jet stream and bringing northwest flow back into the region, we will introduce the chance for showers and storms across the region here, but as far as where the specifics are going to be there, we'll leave that for our later forecasts. So we will finish with the high temperature forecast then for the next 5 days. Your Tuesday high temps cooler in parts of the Ohio River Valley, parts of the eastern Corn Belt, where we're still dealing with the remnants of Barry clouds and rain and thunderstorms, but the heat certainly starting to build across parts of the central plains as we get into Thursday or Wednesday, and then eventually Thursday, now seeing that heat becoming more widespread, Friday, and then Saturday. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have an in-depth look at the evolution of the next 1 to 2 weeks in our Thursday morning ag forecast video, and I'll have your next Corn Belt regional update for you right here on Friday. Have a great day.